January 1975. A magazine cover shows a mysterious metal box covered in switches and blinking lights. Price tag, $30.97. The company that made it expected to sell maybe 200 units. They got 4,000 orders in the first month. The prototype, lost in the mail. Never made it to New York. So they faked it, put switches and LEDs in an empty box, shot the cover photo. That fake computer launched the personal computer revolution. Within months, a Harvard dropout and his friend would write software for it without ever touching the machine. They coded on a simulator, tested it on a plane ride, borrowed $40 for a motel room. That desperate gamble became Microsoft. The Altair 8800. The computer nobody asked for, that everyone suddenly wanted. This is the story of the most important magazine cover in tech history, and how one bankrupt businessman's last-ditch effort changed everything. This is the story of how the first computer was marketed. ACT-1. The Calculator Graveyard. Albuquerque, New Mexico. A small electronics company sits in a nondescript storefront. The sign reads MIT, Microinstrumentation and Telemetry Systems. Ed Roberts was a 34-year-old former Air Force officer, engineer, entrepreneur, dreamer. In 1969, he'd started MIT's making electronics kits for model rocket hobbyists. Small kits, simple circuits. It worked for a while. Then, in 1971, Roberts had a breakthrough. Electronic calculators. Back then, calculators cost hundreds of dollars. Roberts saw an opportunity. He designed a calculator kit, sold it through Popular Electronics magazine for $175. It was a hit. By 1973, MIT's was doing over $1 million in sales. Roberts hired employees, expanded production, built a real company. Then, the bottom fell out. Texas Instruments, Hewlett-Packard, Casio. The giants entered the calculator market. Mass production, overseas manufacturing. Prices collapsed. By late 1974, calculators that Roberts sold for $175, you could buy them at Kmart for $19.95. MIT's was drowning, $300,000 in debt, down to just 20 employees. The bank gave Roberts an ultimatum. Make something people want, or we're shutting you down. Roberts had one idea, one last shot. What if, instead of selling calculator chips, he built a computer? Not $1 million mainframe for corporations. A computer for regular people, hobbyists, engineers, students. Everyone told him it was impossible. Intel was selling their new 8080 microprocessor chip for $360. How do you build an entire computer for under $400 when the chip alone costs that much? Roberts picked up the phone, called Intel. I want to buy 1,000 chips. What's your price? Intel thought he was crazy. Nobody orders 1,000 chips. But Roberts knew something they didn't. He had experience buying calculator chips in bulk. He negotiated, hard. Final price, $75 per chip. Roberts hung up, did the math. With that price, he could build a computer, sell it for under $400, and maybe, just maybe, save his company. There was just one problem. He had $65,000 left. That was it. If this computer failed, MIT's was finished. ACT-2, the deadline. Summer 1974. Ed Roberts and his head engineer Bill Yates started building. They worked out of a small workshop. No fancy labs, no corporate resources. Just two guys, a soldering iron, and a deadline. The Intel 8080 chip was powerful enough to actually do something useful, run programs, process data. But building a computer around it? That was the challenge. Roberts designed it to be expandable. The computer would have a bus, slots where you could add memory boards, input-output cards, peripherals. It wouldn't just be a computer, it would be a platform. Then, in September 1974, Roberts got a phone call. Les Solomon, technical editor at Popular Electronics magazine. Solomon had a proposition. Popular Electronics was looking for a computer construction project, something their readers could build at home. But not just any computer. It had to be powerful, professional-looking, and cost under $500. If Roberts could deliver, they'd put it on the cover of their January 1975 issue. The cover of Popular Electronics, hundreds of thousands of readers, nationwide distribution. Roberts knew what this meant. This wasn't just a magazine article. This was a lifeline. If this worked, if people actually bought it, MIT's would survive. Roberts agreed. He had until November, about 60 days, to finish the design, build a working prototype, ship it to New York. Roberts and Yates worked around the clock. The computer needed a name. Roberts' daughter was watching Star Trek one night. The Enterprise was heading to the star Altair. "Call it Altair," she said. The Altair 8800 was born. By October 1974, they had it, a working prototype. A metal box, about the size of a small suitcase, toggle switches on the front panel, rows of LED lights. No keyboard, no screen, no permanent memory. But it worked. It was a real computer. Roberts shipped it to Popular Electronics headquarters in New York City, via Railway Express Agency. Now all he had to do was wait. November 1974. The call came. The prototype never arrived. Railway Express was on strike. Packages were sitting in warehouses. Lost, delayed, disappeared. The Altair 8800B, the computer that was supposed to save MIT, was gone. The magazine was going to print in days. The January issue had to be registered by November 29th. And they had no computer to photograph. ACT3, the fake that changed history. Les Solomon had a problem. He had photos of the Altair from earlier visits to MIT's. The article was written. The deadline was days away. But Popular Electronics needed a cover photo, a real physical computer to put in front of the camera. Roberts got to work, fast. But he couldn't build another full prototype in time. So he did something else. He built a fake. Roberts took an empty Altair case, added toggle switches to the front panel, wired up some LEDs so they'd light up. But inside, just enough circuitry to make the lights blink. No CPU, no memory, no actual computer. It was a prop, a shell, a facade. But it looked like the real thing. Solomon photographed it. The fake Altair, sitting on a table, LEDs glowing, professional. Impressive. The headline: World's first mini-computer kit to rival commercial models. The January 1975 issue of Popular Electronics was registered on November 29, 1974. It hit newsstands on December 19, 1974, the week before Christmas. And the world noticed. Hobbyists saw it. Engineers saw it. College students saw it. A computer, a real programmable computer, for 3 cents and no vanazet dollars. Not $10,000, not $50,000. MIT's wasn't ready for what happened next. December 1974. The phones wouldn't stop ringing. Orders. Questions. More orders. Roberts had to hire extra people just to answer the phones. By the end of January 1975, 1,000 orders. By the end of February, 2,000 orders. By May, 4,000 orders. Roberts had told his banker he might sell 800 computers, maybe. He actually needed to sell just 200 to break even. He got 4,000 orders in 5 months. The Altair 8800 became the first commercially successful personal computer in history. But there was a problem. Roberts couldn't keep up. The quoted delivery time was 60 days, but it was taking 6 months, sometimes longer. Customers were waiting. Some wanted refunds. Roberts sent letters. "Do you want your money back?" Almost everyone said, "No, we'll wait." Because they understood. This wasn't just a computer, this was the future. And it was worth waiting for. ACT4, the Harvard dropout. December 1974, Cambridge, Massachusetts. Paul Allen was walking across Harvard Square to visit his friend Bill Gates. Allen was 22, a college dropout working as a programmer at Honeywell in Boston. Gates was 19, a Harvard sophomore studying math and law. The two had been friends since high school in Seattle, both obsessed with computers. both convinced the future belonged to software. Alan stopped at a newsstand, out-of-town news in Harvard Square. There it was, the new popular electronics. On the cover, a gray metal box with switches and lights. World's first mini-computer kit. Alan's heart started racing. He bought the magazine, ran to Gates's dorm room. "Bill, look at this." Gates read the article. Once, twice. Both of them understood immediately. This computer, it was powerful enough to run a programming language. And if it could run BASIC, hobbyists could actually use it. Write programs, do real work. Gates looked at Alan. "We need to write BASIC for this. Right now." There was just one small problem. They didn't have an Altair. They'd never even seen one in person. And they didn't have the Intel 8080 chip to test their code. Most people would have given up, said it couldn't be done. But Gates and Alan weren't most people. Alan had an idea. Years earlier, they'd built a traffic data processor called Traf-O-Data. For that project, Alan had written an emulator, a program that simulated the Intel 8008 chip on a PDP-10 mainframe. What if they did it again? Simulated the 8080 chip, built a virtual Altair, wrote the code on Harvard's computer. It was audacious, crazy, brilliant. But first, they needed to make a call. Gates called MIT's in Albuquerque. Ed Roberts answered. "Mr. Roberts, my name is Bill Gates. My partner and I have written a BASIC interpreter for the 8080. We'd like to show it to you." It was a lie. They hadn't written anything yet. But Roberts didn't know that. "Can you demonstrate it?" Roberts asked. "Yes. Give us a few weeks." Roberts agreed. March 1975. Gates hung up. They had 8 weeks to write a BASIC interpreter from scratch. Without the actual computer, Gates and Alan moved into Harvard's computer lab, practically lived there. Alan wrote the 8080 emulator, making the PDP-10 think it was an Altair. Gates wrote BASIC, the interpreter that would let users program the Altair with simple commands. They worked through January, through February. Gates would code until he collapsed, sleep on the floor, wake up, code again. By mid-February 1975, they had something. A BASIC interpreter, running on a simulator, on Harvard's computer. But it had never touched real hardware. March 1975. Paul Allen boarded a plane to Albuquerque. In his briefcase, a paper tape punched with their BASIC code. Allen had never tested this on a real Altair, never even seen an 8080 chip run it. If it didn't work, they'd blown their shot. Mid-flight, Allen was thinking through the demonstration. How he'd load the tape, how he'd show Roberts. Then he realized something. They'd forgotten to write a bootloader. The Altair needed a small program to read the paper tape into memory, and they didn't have one. Allen grabbed a pen, started writing, machine code, by hand, on the plane. A bootstrap loader, the tiny program that would load the bigger program. Music builds missive improvisation, genius. By the time the plane landed, he had it. Ed Roberts picked Allen up at the airport in his pickup truck. They drove to MIT's, a nondescript storefront. Nothing fancy. Inside, the Altair 8800, with 7 kilobytes of memory, connected to a teletype machine. Allen sat down, took a deep breath. He manually entered the bootstrap loader, flipping switches, binary code, 1 bit at a time. It took 15 minutes. Then he loaded the paper tape into the teletype reader. The teletype clattered, printing, loading, 15 more minutes. Then, the screen printed, memory size. It worked. Allen typed print 2+2. The computer responded, 4 inches. Bill Gates and Paul Allen had just written the first commercial software for a personal computer, without ever touching the machine. Ed Roberts hired Allen on the spot. Director of Software, MIT's first and only software employee. Gates took a leave of absence from Harvard, moved to Albuquerque. They called their partnership Microsoft, a blend of microcomputer and software. Within months, they dropped the hyphen, Microsoft. The rest is history. ACT 5 The Ripple Effect. The Altair 8800 didn't just create one company. It created an entire industry. March 1975, Menlo Park, California. A group of hobbyists gathered in a garage. They called themselves the Homebrew Computer Club. They passed around the latest issue of Popular Electronics, studied the Altair, shared ideas. In that garage, future legends. Steve Wozniak, a young engineer at Hewlett-Packard, he saw the Altair and thought, I can build something better. Within a year, he'd designed the Apple and Atom Osborne. He'd go on to create the Osborne One, the first portable computer. Lee Felsenstein, future designer of the Osborne and the Soul computer. From that one club, 23 computer companies emerged. 23. All because of one magazine cover. By August 1975, MITS had shipped 5,000 computers. By 1977, before Roberts sold the company, 40,000 units. The Altair 8800 wasn't the most elegant computer. It wasn't the easiest to use. But it proved something crucial. People wanted personal computers. And once that genie was out of the bottle, there was no putting it back. The next wave arrived. The Apple II, with color graphics and a keyboard. The Commodore PET, the TRS-80 from Radio Shack. Real computers, for real people. And every single one owed its existence to the Altair. Ed Roberts sold MITs to Protect Computer Corporation in 1977 for $6.5 million. He walked away with $3 million. A millionaire. But money wasn't why he did it. It was fun when we started. Roberts said years later, it was a challenge, but by the time we sold it had become too corporate. Roberts moved to Georgia, bought a farm, studied medicine, became a small-town doctor. The man who started the personal computer revolution spent his final years making house calls in rural Georgia. He died in 2010, at 68 years old. Bill Gates wrote his obituary. Ed was willing to take a chance on us. Two young guys interested in computers long before they were commonplace. The day our first software worked on his Altair was the start of a lot of great things. The lessons we learn today. So what can we learn from the story of the Altair 8800? Lesson 1: marketing isn't about perfection. It's about timing. The computer on the cover of Popular Electronics? Fake. The prototype? Lost in the mail. The first units shipped? Took months longer than promised. But none of that mattered. Because Ed Roberts understood something crucial. Perfect is the enemy of done. The world didn't need a perfect computer. They needed to know it was possible. Lesson 2: price changes everything. Before the Altair, computers cost $10,000 to $50,000. The Altair cost $397. That wasn't just a discount, that was a revolution. Roberts proved that by lowering the price, you don't just expand the market, you create a new one. Lesson 3: platforms beat products. The Altair wasn't just a computer, it was a platform. The expansion bus, the open architecture. Third parties could build memory cards, interface boards, software. Roberts didn't try to control everything. He built the foundation and let others innovate on top of it. That openness created the S100 bus standard, the backbone of the early PC industry. Lesson 4: sometimes the first version is enough. The Altair had no keyboard, no screen, no permanent storage. You programmed it by flipping switches on the front panel. It was primitive, difficult, frustrating, but it was real. And that was enough. Because the hobbyists who bought it, they didn't want a finished product. They wanted possibility. Lesson 5: desperation can be the mother of innovation. Ed Roberts wasn't trying to change the world. He was trying to save his company. He had $65,000 and 60 days. Sometimes the best innovations come not from abundance, but from necessity. When you have no other option, you find a way. Today, there are over 2 billion personal computers in the world. Laptops, desktops, tablets, smartphones that have more power than entire rooms of computers from the 1970s. And every single one traces back to a bankrupt calculator salesman in Albuquerque, a fake photo in a magazine, and 2 kids who wrote software for a computer they'd never touched. The Altair 8800 wasn't the best computer. It wasn't the smartest business plan. It wasn't the smoothest launch, but it was first, and first matters. Ed Roberts took a chance when no one else would. Bill Gates and Paul Allen bet everything on an idea. And together, they proved that the impossible was possible. So if you're working on something the world doesn't understand yet, if you're building something with limited resources and impossible deadlines, remember the Altair. It was fake on the cover, late on delivery, imperfect in execution. But it changed everything. Because done is better than perfect. And sometimes, a desperate gamble becomes a revolution. Thanks for watching. If this story inspired you, drop a comment below. What are you building that the world doesn't understand yet? And remember, the next revolution starts with someone brave enough to ship the first version. In memory of H. Edward Roberts, 1941 to 2010, the father of the personal computer,